It might seem a bizarre, even macabre topic, but what happens when somebody's electrocuted? Is it the dramatic blue flash you see in the films, or something far more ordinary and dangerous? On Thursday, Dr. John Twybell brings decades of forensic experience to the new Remembrance Hall in Charlton for a University of the Third Age talk exploring electrocution, electro-murder, and the myths we think we understand. He joined the Home Office Forensic Service in 1974 and went on to specialise in fire, explosion and electrical investigation.
I became the sort of expert at electrical causes of fire. I used to get called all over the country looking at supposed electrical causes of fire, which, of course, an awful lot of fires that are put down as electrical aren't. When you get there, you find, no, it's not. It's an arson or something like that.
His talk tackles one of the most persistent myths in crime drama, the idea that electrocution is instant, explosive and theatrical.
I once saw would it be a Bond film or something, where there's a bloke sat in a bath and somebody comes in and throws an electric heater into the bath. There's a flash and bang, and the bloke's dead. But it doesn't work like that.
Instead, John will explain electrocution depends on something much less cinematic, completing a circuit.
You've got to get the current to go through the body, if you like, through the centre of the body, past the heart region. So electrocutions are mainly like hand to hand or hand to head or hand to feet, bare feet. I've investigated several where people have completed the electrical circuit by having a pee. Urine is a very good conductor of electricity, full of electrolytes, and it's straight into the body. The main resistance of the body is due to the skin. If your skin's dry, you might get away with it. If your skin was wet, you would be dead.
So there's lots of misconceptions, clearly, aren't there?
Most of the time these days, it's a plastic bath. The person in the bath would have to grab hold of, say, a tap that's connected to earth, and a lot of pipe work is plastic these days as well, or they'd have to sort of pull themselves up on an earth radiator or something like that to create a circuit.
In fact, he says attempted electro-murder cases follow the same flawed logic as the films and often fail for that reason, thankfully.
The electric circuits are so well protected these days that you shouldn't really get a shock. You need two things to go wrong, really. You need two faults that break down the insulation, say, so that somebody can touch something that's live, them connecting also to earth at the same time. You need two events. You've got all the protective gear, you've got RCDs, residual current devices in the circuitry and that. There should be very little chance of anyone getting electrocuted.
When you watch the movies, if somebody's trying to bury some nefarious action, they'll set fire to a building and try and bury the evidence of whatever it might be they're trying to hide.
Quite often the fire gets put out before it's complete. And so you can often follow sort of smoke deposits and fire damage. Quite often you can work out where the fire started. I used to hate watching Silent Witness. I now don't watch it. I haven't watched it for probably 20 years. They were pathologists doing the work of both the pathologist and the forensic scientist.
I bet you strike up some interesting conversations at dinner parties. Some people might want to talk, other people might not want to discuss these sort of things over dinner.
I don't go to dinner parties very often.
For to get invited. Dr. Twybell will even address long-standing curiosities like so-called spontaneous human combustion.
About a year ago, I gave a talk on spontaneous human combustion in Sydney.
It's a bit like all those UFO sightings, really. It was very popular in the 70s. People talked about it, and it gets hardly any discussion now.
I try not to say at first whether I consider it to be a myth or it's real. People used to occasionally set themselves on fire in old armchairs. They would typically be old people. They would typically be quite often they would have been drunk and therefore less likely to know what they were doing.
After leaving the Forensic Science Service in the year 2000, John taught forensic science at university and continued working as a consultant, bringing real-world experience into the lecture theatre.
When I first joined the FSS, Forensic Science Service was what every other country aspired to, sort of thing. We had the best one in the world because we got highly trained individuals. They worked almost exclusively for the police or coroners. They knew what they were doing. But once they went towards the Forensic Science Agency, it all became rather political. And what happened was the police had to be given a forensic budget so they could pay for the work to be done. Up until then, it was a government service. Provision to the police or coroners was a public service. Once the police had to pay for it, then, of course, the police start to look around for cheaper options. Former colleagues would resign from the forensic science service and set up small labs doing specialist things. And these labs slowly grew in size, and they tended to undercut the forensic science service as was. Some of these labs were sort of undercutting the forensic science service and offering to do all of a certain type of job for a police force, but leaving the more complex jobs to what was left of the forensic science service. And so the forensic science service was losing money because it couldn't charge enough for keeping up with the jobs that required more work. 2012, George Osborne, when he was Chancellor, said, well, the forensic science service agency is losing money. I'm going to shut it down.
John Twybell's talk, Electrocution, Electro-Murder, is at the U3A meeting on Thursday, the 5th of March, at the new Remembrance Hall in Charlton, starting at 10:30.